Hi there and welcome back to the course. In this video, we're going to get started developing the note controller. Okay, so when we click on one of these notes inside of our folder, we want to see a note controller where we can type text and save text and all that good stuff. So to give you an idea, let me flip over to this somewhat completed version of the app. I have the completed version, but this is the non-completed version installed on my phone. But you'll see that you have this note controller here with text and a date label, and you got some icons at the bottom. So go ahead and feel free to open up the iOS Notes app on your phone and take a look at what that looks like, okay? So the first set of things we're going to be completing specifically in this video is we're going to get this controller presented, and we're going to get all these bar button items in here, okay? As well as these ones on the right up top, okay? We're also going to get these down in here on the previous controller in there, and then we will move on to constraining this text view and label view on the screen, okay? So let's get started by going over to our application and creating a new file inside of controllers. Let's name this file note controller. Let's make it a Swift file, and let's hit return to create it, and we're in a good spot to start creating this view controller. Okay, so first step is to import UIKit instead of Foundation. And let's type out our class, okay? So we'll say class note controller. And let's go ahead and derive this from UI view controller. You could even call this something like note detail controller, which is what I'm gonna call it. I'm gonna call this note detail controller because that kind of goes along design patterns more appropriately. So note detail controller. And I'm now going to type out the view did load. So view did load, super.view did load. And we now have our controller initialized. And we now have our controller set up. Let's go ahead and set the background color to white. And let's type out the view will appear method to set up our bar button items. We'll say view.super will appear, super.view will appear. Animated, and we can now set these up. So we'll say let items is equal to UI bar button item. And we're gonna have a lot of items in here specifically because we're gonna need a lot of flexible space. So let's go ahead and say UI bar button item. And these icons, you can put whatever you want. We're not gonna make them functional for a while. So when we do in a bonus section, what I will do is change these up according to what we need to change them to, okay? I'll say nil and nil. And then I'm just going to copy that and paste it a few times, okay? So bam, bam, bam. Let's flip over to the completed app and see how many we need. So about 5, but you're going to see that we need flexible space. So we're going to end up having a lot more items in here, like 9 or something. Okay, bam, and I will try and get these all to be on the same line. The way I'm doing this is selecting it and hitting Shift Tab and Tab, okay? Tab to make it go forward, Shift Tab to make it go back. Okay, so organize, let's go with refresh. Let's go with add. And obviously camera isn't in the Notes app, but I'm just putting in icons for now. We're gonna add in custom icons in the bonus section. All right, and then I'm gonna say compose. That one's actually right, the compose one. Okay, so compile that. And nothing's going to happen because 1, we haven't even set them, and 2, we haven't even pushed our controller. So don't compile it. And then what we're going to do is say self.toolbar items is equal to items. And then we need to declare the top items. Okay, so we need to say let top items is UI bar button items. And we're just going to put that in there and that. And then we will hit the space here, get rid of that comma, and put that like that, okay? And I'll change this to add and this one to action. Okay, so feel free to pause the video and get this all in there. We're gonna need one more line of code, however, so let's say self.navigation item.set right bar button items. And we're just gonna put in the top items there. And we'll say animated false, okay? So now you can pause it and just get this code in there and we should be good to continue. Let's go ahead and let's go into our folder notes controller. And when we select it on line 40-ish, what we want to do is say let, and we'll say note detail controller is equal to note detail controller. And just make sure that you're getting all these naming right, because you'll see that the N here is lowercase and this one's capitalized. You can run into a lot of problems if you overlook that. All right, next thing we'll do is we will just simply say navigation controller dot push view controller note detail controller animated true, and we should be good. Okay, so pause the video, get this code in there in your folder notes controller, and we're now going to compile our application and see just what that looks like. Okay, so I'm going to compile it to the iPhone XR, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to select a folder and select a note, and you'll see it pushes this view controller, and we have all these items down here, right? Except for they're kind of all on the left, which doesn't really look good. You'll see the top one looks great though. You see these top two, they look great. Okay, so to get these all to fit properly, what we need to do is go to our note detail controller, and we need to provide spacing in between each one of these. So let's copy this one. Well, we don't need to copy it because it's a different initializer. We'll say UI bar button item. Actually, it's the same one, but whatever. We'll say dot flexible space, nil and nil. Put a comma there. And now let's copy this flexible space and put it in between refresh and add, and in between add and camera, and we should be good to go. Let's see, we're gonna need another between camera and compose. So go ahead and copy that and put it in there. Pause the video, get these lines in here, and we should be good to go there. Let's go ahead and click on a folder. Let's click on a note, and you'll see we have all of our icons, and it looks really nice, okay? Now, the one last thing we need to do before we continue is we need to get in these ones here for the folders notes controller, the folder notes controller. So what I want you to do is I just want you to go into the folder notes controller, and let's go to our view will appear. Looks like we haven't implemented it yet. So we'll type in view will appear, and we'll say super.view will appear, animated, and we're gonna say let items is of type UI bar button item, and then we will say UI bar button item. This one's gonna be dot folder. I believe that's what it is. Looks like we don't have a folder icon. Let's see which one it is. Let's just go with organize. And then nil and nil, and then we're gonna need some flexible space in there. So I just had that on my clipboard, so I copied it in, the flexible space. This one's gonna be a little bit more custom. We need to say UI bar button item and select the title one. Initializes a new item using the specified title and other properties. Let's just say 5 notes for now. We'll change this later on as we get more dynamic with data. And the style is gonna be dot default, or we'll say dot done, nil and nil. Okay, go ahead and paste the flexible space in there. And we now just need one more bar button item. And this bar button item is gonna be the dot compose, nil and nil. And then we just need to say self.toolbar items is equal to items. Okay, cool. Now, when we write a new note, we actually need that controller to appear there as well, right? So let's go ahead and see these icons are working, and then we'll add that functionality in. So we click on this, we click on this, we have all of our icons, everything's looking great. But when we click this button, it doesn't really open up a new controller. So let's just add that functionality in really quick because it's so simple. We'll say add Objective-C, file private func. Actually, I believe that needs to go within it. Well, we'll see. So we'll say add Objective-C. I'll show you what happens when it doesn't go in. We'll say file private func, and we'll just say push, let's say create new note. All right, we'll say let note detail controller. It's equal to note detail controller with a capital N. And then again, pretty simple, navigation controller, question mark, dot push view controller, note detail controller, animated true. Let's compile our app, not gonna work, so let's add that target in and action by going here to compose and saying target is self, and the action is gonna be selector self dot create note, new note. And we compile it, it's going to give us an error because it's not exposed to Objective-C. So go ahead and hit this red button and hit fix, and it adds that add Objective-C before the file private. Let's compile our application, and now when we click on that compose button, it should present to us that new note detail controller. And we're basically going to have to give it different properties in the create new note and in the did select row at to determine whether or not we're going to edit that data or we are going to create a new controller, okay? A new note. So let's go into here. Let's select a note. It works. Let's hit this compose button and it also works, okay? So that's it for this video. In the next video, we're going to set up the text view inside of our note detail controller. I'll see you in just a second.